So as the Jewish world was commenting and lamenting, I think the secular humanistic Jewish world was feeling a little excited and somewhat hopeful. A year later, and looking back, I would say, slow down, everybody take a deep breath, and take this opportunity for a deeper analysis of what the study actually tells us. So all the key components of humanism caution me not to oversimplify what the results mean. And even after delving into the data, I feel that among the existing denominations in Judaism today, which are Orthodox, Reform, Conservative, Reconstructionist, Renewal, and Secular Humanistic, that the secular humanistic Jewish philosophy and the values that are derived from that philosophy and whose identity is derived from Jewish culture, I think it still expresses the ever-increasing ideas and perspectives of Jews today. A few words about the study methodology. This is very interesting. The respondents were chosen if they answered Jewish, Judaism, or yes to the following questions. What is your present religion, if any? If they said none, it went on to, aside from religion, do you consider yourself Jewish or partially Jewish? Do you consider yourself Jewish or partially Jewish? So that's a self-identity question. And the third is, did you have a Jewish parent? Or were you raised Jewish or partially Jewish or not? So if they said yes to any of those, then they were considered to be Jewish for the purposes of this study. And the results were, in fact, that the Jewish population increased according to the numbers extrapolated from the study, and they, in fact, increased because it's the broadest ever definition of who is a Jew of all the studies that have ever been done, including the study that secular humanistic Judaism did. That last piece about were you raised Jewish or partially Jewish has never been a final consideration that somebody was Jewish, if that was the only part of the Jewish identity. So overall, the findings were that those who identify as Jews of religion, who are married, so married to somebody who's Jewish, and older, more than 45 or 50, all are more strongly attached to being Jewish, no matter what they measured that on. And those things also correlate to one another. So the older, the in marriage, and identifying as Jews of religion all correlate one to the other. The major finding in regards to Jewish identity was that U.S. Jews see being Jewish as more a matter of ancestry, culture, and values than of religious observance. And this was the thing that humanistic Judaism got excited about. And in fact, 6 in 10 say that being Jewish is mainly a matter of culture or ancestry, compared with 15% who said that it was mainly a matter of religion. And even more interesting, that 1 in 5 Jews, 22%, say that they have no religion. The study also asked about pride and the importance of being Jewish. And they discovered that 94% of U.S. Jews, including 97% of Jews by religion And 83% of Jews of no religion say they're proud to be Jewish. 3/4 of all U.S. Jews also say they have a strong sense of belonging to the Jewish people. And the study also showed that more than 4 in 10 Jews, 46% in fact, say being Jewish is very important in their lives, and 1/3 say being Jewish is somewhat important to them. So that's 80% of all Jews that say being Jewish is either very important or somewhat important to them. When looking at questions about what it means to be Jewish, the question posed was, please tell me how important each of the following is to what being Jewish means to you. So these were the measurements from their perspective that indicated what being Jewish was about. And they always presented the list in random order. But this is how the statistics came out in terms of what the study people said were the most important things to them. So 73% of all the people asked said that remembering the Holocaust was the most important aspect of their being Jewish. And again, don't forget they're choosing from a list that was given to them. And you could do other, but people tend not to. 69% said leading an ethical and moral life is what being Jewish is all about. 56% say working for justice and equality in society is what being Jewish is about. Being intellectually curious, 49%. Caring about Israel, 43%. Having a good sense of humor, 42%. Nobody who's not Jewish has a good sense of humor, apparently. Being part of the Jewish community, 28%. Observing Jewish law, 19%. And eating traditional Jewish foods, 14%. So the first place I went with this is the only question that talked all about Jewish practice was observing Jewish law. That's how it was stated. So I don't know if you were asked the question, how important is observing Jewish law to you in terms of your being Jewish. My guess is that less people in this room would speak to that was central. Do you remember the things that I said? Do you remember what kind of triggered you as what might be the most important from that list for you?
Holocaust.
So that was what most people said, and you agree that in terms of your own Jewish identity?
Not forgetting the Holocaust and making sure it doesn't happen again.
Okay, that's exactly here. Anybody else?
Intellectual curiosity.
Okay.
Leading an ethical and moral life.
Okay.
I have a question.
Sure.
Okay. Jewish law, what that encompasses a lot, because I could say I observe the holidays, which is Jewish law, but nothing else. So it's a very broad category.
Yes. It is a very broad category, and I think an easily misunderstood category.
Did they specify what they meant by Jewish law?
No, and you can't stop somebody who's, saying, well, what do they mean by that? I'm just giving you the questionnaire, lady. So you can't get an idea of what was meant from their perspective, from the people who designed the questionnaire. Anyone else? Okay, so I think that observing Jewish law suggests a very specific way of being Jewish. And given some of the questions that they asked later on, I wonder if asking whether they participated in Jewish life or in Jewish practice might not have been a better question and given them a more accurate picture of what was really going on than that question. Because I think we're left, I don't think that gives us really very much information at all. So, because without knowing what the respondents actually meant by they observed Jewish law, we don't really have anything useful to evaluate. I'm guessing that participating in Jewish practices may have elicited a more predictable or precise response. However, later in the study, they asked about Jewish practice, and 7 in 10 Jews say they participated in a Passover meal or a Seder. That is consistent with all the other studies. That is the biggie. More people participate in a Passover meal or a Seder, a family meal of some kind, than any other Jewish practice. And then this was interesting. 53% said they fasted for all or part of Yom Kippur. They also asked if they light Shabbat candles, keep a kosher home, or refrain from handling money on the Sabbath. About a third attend services a few times a year, like on Rosh Hashanah or Yom Kippur. But they didn't ask about lighting Hanukkah candles, which from all the other studies, after Passover, the lighting Hanukkah candles is the second most mentioned practice that people participate in. Or even getting together for family Rosh Hashanah or Yom Kippur dinner. So they didn't ask that question either. Although they did ask whether eating traditional Jewish foods is the most important part of being Jewish to you. The other thing I wanted to say, and I think it's evident that, are Jews the only ones who have intellectual curiosity? Are Jews the only one who work for social justice? To me, that may be important to them as Jews. However, it's also important to other people who are not Jewish. So I'm not sure exactly what that tells us, but I don't think it's not real useful information from my standpoint. So, okay, so dealing with beliefs, and they did ask a series of belief questions. Do you believe in God or a universal spirit or not? Now, I don't know about all of you, but if I'm asked a question, do you believe in God or universal spirit, that's not a problem for me. But combining God with the universal spirit, I think is a biased question. I think that you're going to get a lot of people who identify as cultural Jews predominantly who say that they believe in some universal energy or spirit. How certain are you about the belief? So 7 in 10 U.S. Jews believe in God or a universal spirit, 72%, including, and here we are, a third who say they are absolutely certain, and then among Jews of no religion, 45% believe in God or a universal spirit, with 18% saying they are absolutely convinced of God's existence. So if you had any tendency at all to look at that construct, that study construct of Jews of no religion, and say, those are secular Jews, you gotta put that aside, because they're also telling you right now that 45% of those Jews say they believe in God or a universal spirit. And we have no way of knowing what anybody means by either God or a universal spirit. Another question that was pretty illuminating was, in your opinion, can a person be Jewish if they do or believe the following things? They asked about working on the Sabbath. So if they don't do, I think it's can be Jewish if they do or believe one of the following. So they asked about working on the Sabbath, believing in God, being strongly critical of the state of Israel, and believing that Jesus was the Messiah. So here are the results. 94% stated that a person could be Jewish and work on the Sabbath. 89% agreed that you could be strongly critical of the state of Israel. 68% reported that you could be Jewish and not believe in God. And 34% reported that you could believe that Jesus was the Messiah and still be Jewish.
What percent?
What did you say? 34%.
Jews for Jesus.
Or not. I mean, my guess is that, that question about were you raised Jewish or partially Jewish? The partially Jewish means that you were also raised partially Christian. That's why I'm saying that the study
Those who are partially Jewish, no.
I don't have them broken down that way.
Are those percentages just of the people who self-identified in some way as Jewish?
Yes.
Or are they for everybody? Okay.
Yeah. These are the people that they didn't interview the others. That's you had to identify in some way to be part of the study, but not as strongly as in others. In exploring affiliation, the research found that about 3 in 10 American Jews include 19% of Jews by religion, and 2/3 of the Jews of no religion say they do not identify with any particular Jewish denomination. Well, that makes sense. Although the 20% of Jews by religion that don't identify denominationally, I think is an interesting statistic. The survey also showed that Reform Judaism continues to be the largest Jewish denomination in the U.S., and that 1/3 of all U.S. Jews identify with the Reform movement, while 18% identify with conservative Judaism, 10% with Orthodox Judaism, and 6% with a variety of smaller groups, such as the Reconstructionist and Jewish renewal movements. We aren't in any of this data. In looking at Jews of no religion, 1 in 5 describe themselves as Reform. Okay, so remember, these are the people that said, I do not identify with Judaism as a religion, but 20% of them identify themselves as being part of the Reform movement, while 6% identify with conservative Judaism and 1% say they are Orthodox Jews. This is when you start reading.
They didn't read the question right, I guess.
It wasn't read the question, it was hear the question, and they may have, by the way, heard it right. I mean, I think that the way we have to look at this data is that they heard it right, and that what we're dealing with is a complexity of information that people haven't bothered to sort out. We were talking earlier, and I think that if religious Judaism looked at this data the way I'm looking at it, they'd feel more comfortable, frankly, about the data, because it's confused. It's not 6 in 10 Jews now say that they're cultural Jews and not religious Jews. That's not so clear and consistent all the way down the line. So I think that any finding of this type reinforces why I refuse to make statements that the secular identity of Jews of no religion, that they're one and the same. So in seeking to understand who might be part of our camp, we know that 4% of Jews of no religion who responded other to the denominational question, because that's where we fall. Let's see. Reconstructionist and Jewish renewal were specifically identified, so that removes them from the other category.